everybody and welcome back to the channel. For today's review, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Scrap Hook. The first figure that I'm going to be reviewing over on the channel for Year 2 of Legacy, and I think probably one of the most interesting concepts that we've seen from this line so far. Basically, Hasbro are taking the Junkions and the Weaponizers that we've seen scattered throughout the War for Cybertron line and are fusing them together to create the first proper transforming weaponizer. I mean, this guy doesn't actually have to parts form in terms of transformation at all, which is awesome, and yet he can actually detach. And I believe you can kind of customize these Junkions, so you can take the front end of this guy and stick it on another Junkion that hopefully we'll see in a later wave. It's just going to be so sick, and these are original designs as well. I don't believe any of these guys specifically appeared in the 1986 movie. So let's check Scrap Hook out, and as you guys can see, amazingly designed. I think the biggest reason why I like this guy so much is because he has an almost live-action movie quality to him, especially as far as the design goes. So as you guys can see, color-wise, an almost spot-on match to the Junkions that we've already seen for Studio Series, but design-wise, really distinctive. I mean, the head sculpt just looks fantastic, especially with that steel eye patch and this sick looking metallic mohawk, although he does slightly suffer from hollow head syndrome, something which we saw with, I think it was the core class Hot Rod, but I mean, it's not too bad. These Junkions are just kind of silly and robotic anyhow, but as you guys can see, really nice looking chest piece. I think that looks great, and as we come down here to the legs, loving the design of this, although I'm not the biggest fan of the heel spurs. They do just kind of jut out to the sides, and I wish maybe they could have been compressed a little further in, but the attention to detail is bang on. We've got suspension, some hydraulics packed in there, really awesomely designed, and articulation isn't too shabby either. So we do get a swivel joint here at the head, would have been wicked had it been on a ball joint, rotation out of the shoulders as well as a hinge joint forwards and backwards, although they're a little clunky due to how large they are. They do kind of obstruct the head, so that's a shame, but we do get a rotation here at the bicep, double jointed elbows on a deluxe class, which I mean, come on, is this the first time we're seeing this in a very long time? I think so. Full rotation there out of the wrist, a waist rotation, the hips can kick forwards that far, back to that far, out to the sides, rotation just above the knee, 90-degree bend there, and the foot can pivot not only forwards and backwards, but can also rock side to side, so awesome. Now the only thing that I'm not the biggest fan of in regards to kind of the upper chest would be this gap that we have between the neck brace and the chest piece. Now you can slightly mistransform him and hide this by essentially detaching the shoulders, taking this neck piece and tucking it under the chest piece, and then overlapping these tabs on top of the neck. And at least to me, from a frontal perspective, that looks so much better. So will definitely be how I'll be displaying him on the shelf, but in all, wicked. Now let's turn to kind of this weaponizer functionality. So not only is this guy painted and sculpted to the teeth, but we also get a shed ton of accessories. I believe something like 7 different accessories, which is nuts. So we do get the classic Junkion wheel shield, which has been sculpted very nicely. I also like the asymmetrical design that we have with kind of some of these spikes sheared off, so that looks sick. You can peg it here onto the actual rim, and one thing worth mentioning is that the tires are a separate piece from the rim, so you can peg anything into this, and despite this rolling, it actually won't turn this either, so I thought that was really cool. But we can just peg the shield on there. We also do get some triple barreled stacks, which looks so cool. We can peg them on to the top of the shoulders, which is my preferred look. I just think they look so cool. We also do get 2 guns which are formed out of the engine block, again very nicely sculpted. We can just peg those into the hands, or I guess you could peg them into the shins if you wanted for a slightly more fuller look, which I'll showcase in just a second. And then finally, living up to his name, we actually do get a hook which can be detached from kind of this mounted section, so you can wriggle that off if you wanted to give him an almost animated lockdown vibe. But talking of, let's smack that there on to the side of the forearm, and in all, really cool. As you guys can see, armed to the teeth with weapons, and I can only imagine how sick this is going to look when we do actually get additional Junkions to merge and fuse the parts with. Now, in regards to his Evo Fusion gimmick, I'll very briefly touch base with it here in bot mode. Basically, it is just pulling the arms off just like that, and pulling the legs off just like this, and you're left with a torso, which to be honest, you can't do anything with. But here are all of the additional pieces which you can fuse with other Transformers Transformers, which I'll showcase later on in the video. Now turning to some comparisons, we have Scraphook compared alongside both the Voyager class Studio Series Junk Heap and Wreck-Gar. And in terms of colour, I mean, they literally got it spot on. This kind of orange that we have for the chest piece on Junkyard is a spot on match here for Scraphook, and the same can also be said for the orange plastic. Although I'm not too sure whether it's because I've become accustomed to seeing Voyager Junkyards, but at the moment, Scraphook kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. So I imagine when we get more deluxe Junkyards and kind of flesh all of these out, it's going to look a little better. But at the moment, he does just kind of look a little out of place, but still really cool. I mean, to think we're getting proper Junkyards in 2022 is just nuts, as for the longest time, these characters have kind of just gone unheard of. But yeah, looking cool so far, just hoping to get more of them sooner rather than later. For your average deluxe class comparison, we have here the Earthrise Wheeljack, so decently scaled. I mean, they definitely haven't shrunk them. Studio Series Hot Rod, and finally Earthrise Leader Class Optimus Prime. Now turning to transformation for Scraphook, I think the biggest draw that these Junkyons are going to have when in comparison to our past weaponizers is that there's no parts forming required for the conversion at all, so you literally can keep him in one piece, which is really cool. So to kickstart things off, I personally would recommend to just take all of the weapons off. It just makes things a lot easier. You're going to want to come here to the fists and just rotate them so that the MechTech port is facing outwards. Do the same here for this side. We can then come down here to the leg, take this and just collapse this upon the side of the leg like that. Come around here to this side and rinse and repeat. So just snap that section in like so. We can then combine the two halves and rotate here at the waist so that the front is now facing the back. What you'll then want to do is come around to said back, take these pieces, which again, painted and sculpted so nicely, open them up, and then come to this side, disengage the shoulders away from the neck brace, and then take the chest piece and actually hinge this down. That will then allow us to take the neck and the head, hinge this all the way up until it actually clicks there into place. We can then just angle this here out to the side, hinge this section up, and then take the hips and hinge this here forwards so that we're left with something along the lines of this. Now comes a slightly more trickier part of transformation. Basically, you're going to want to hinge these shoulders up and then take this section here, click that forwards by one, and then rotate at the bicep, and this tab will peg into this slot. Now I would recommend to do this first of all, just kind of rest it in that tab, don't peg it in all of the way, as you actually have to fuse the two halves and things can get slightly jumbled. You'll see what I mean in just a second. So bring this around, click this in by one, then hinge outwards, rotate at the bicep and get that tab just kind of sitting where it will eventually peg in. And now what we can do is click these sections all the way in, and hopefully that should combine in the middle with no problems at all. So that is all looking pretty sweet. We can then bring this down and this slot will peg into this tab, so snap that in there. This tab will peg here into this slot, and then subsequently we'll kind of just house over the top of these sections. So let's just snap that in, make sure that all of that stays together. Come around here to this side and rinse and repeat, snap that into place, and there we have Scraphook fully transformed up into his alt mode with just the bare essentials. I mean, there are no weapons added onto this at all, so let's armor this guy up. So to kickstart things off, you're going to want to bring in these engine block pieces and just snap them into the hood of the vehicle, and already looking super cool. We can then come back to these triple barreled exhaust pipes, and you can peg them into these steel patches that we have along the side or into the actual rims themselves, although I'd recommend smacking them in to this MechTech port just to kind of conceal any ugly hollow gaps. Come around to this side and peg this one in. We can then take the Junkion shield, which is basically a spare tire, snap that in there, and then finally take the Scraphook and peg it into some of the ports here in the back. And I actually really like how it's an asymmetrical design, meaning that when you do peg it in, it does sit right flat in the center. So that's really awesome. And there we have Scraphook with all of the weapons attached. And again, live action movie feels with this guy. He looks incredible. When I first saw him, to me, it looked kind of like a blend between the rumored Battle Trap and Scourge that we've seen on the set of Rise of the Beasts. I mean, it just looks sick. It looks so cool, very Mad Max-esque, and much like Dark of the Moon Megatron. So here at the front, very nicely sculpted. I do like how we've kind of got these steel patches over the headlight, which presumably has been damaged in battle. As you guys can see, we get some of those classic iconic Junkion spikes flaring out to the sides, which is cool. And I love this kind of serrated sun visor that we have here for the windscreen. That looks impressive. Some really nice spike details at the top, and much like the headlight. I like how there's just some patches appearing to be holding certain components together. There are various different dings and dents in the sculpt, which just makes this guy look weathered and battered. I mean, it's just such a cool design, and all of the brown you can see here is actually painted, which for a deluxe class, I wasn't expecting at all. We get another cool steel patch covering up some damage there along the side of the vehicle, those triple barreled smokestacks, which just look insane. And as we come around to the back, kind of giving me Cars Mater vibes, especially here with this hook and the faux tire. I think that all looks really cool. I mean, as far as a pickup truck goes, this thing looks insane. I am hoping we can see this mold reused in the future, slightly retooled into something else, as it's awesome. Now, like I mentioned previously, the actual rims themselves are a separate piece from the tires, meaning that you could easily take this triple barreled exhaust if you wanted to, peg it into this, and you don't actually have to worry about it rotating with the wheel. So I thought that was nicely designed, and by removing that, again, it reveals some really nice patched up detail. I just like this kind of damaged vibe that these Junkions have got going for them. Really, really sweet. And as mentioned previously, Hasbro's intention with them is basically to customize between all the Junkions. So you can take the front half of this here and remove it completely, and I imagine when we get round to wave 2, there'll be another Junkion that you can take the front portion of and peg it onto Scrap Hook, and vice versa. So I think that's going to be really awesome, and the same can also apply here for the back. So we do just give this a little wriggle. This is a little more difficult considering that the tabs are at a slight angle, but we can just remove all of that, and that is the rear end fully detachable. So I thought that was really cool. And turning to some vehicle mode comparisons, here we have Scrap Hook compared alongside the Studio Series Voyager class Wreck-Gar. And as I mentioned for robot mode, at the moment these guys do look slightly out of place with one another, just because there hasn't been no deluxe Junkions, and even more so here in vehicle mode. I mean, Wreck-Gar is supposed to be a motorbike, and Scrap Hook a four-wheeled pickup truck. So yeah, definitely hoping to see more deluxe Junkions sooner rather than later. Here he is compared alongside the Earthrise Leader class Optimus Prime, and to be honest, I don't think they scale too badly at all with one another. And finally, your average deluxe class Carbot, this time in the form of the Earthrise Wheeljack, just so you guys can see roughly how they pair next to each other. But we're not done with Scrap Hook yet. As teased earlier on, this guy does have an Evo Fusion capability, which is basically his weaponizer functionality, where you can break him apart into different components and armor him up with other Transformers. Now here I have Needlenose giving me a helping hand, and I've only chosen him because he has the mech tech ports, which are slightly higher on the shoulders when in comparison to some of the other deluxes. So this is what you'll need to actually equip the shoulder pieces from Scrap Hook onto any Transformer, higher mech tech ports on the shoulders. But just to showcase how this works, you're basically going to want to pop this front end of the car off. We can then take this here and attach the two halves. Just like this, we can bring in our triple barreled exhausts and snap those in there. Do the same here for this side. And as you guys can see, I mean, detail-wise, I think that looks fantastic. We can then fuse them with the shoulder pads of Needlenose. So far so good, definitely what we've come to expect with these weaponizers. And then for some finishing touches, you're going to want to take the rear end of the vehicle clean off, which again can be a little difficult to do, but just pop these off. And this section, as far as I can tell, has no role to play at all. I mean, much like in bot mode, it really and truly is just a leftover part. I mean, there's no mech tech port for you to snap this into the back, so we'll just set this here off to the side for now. And these are basically going to transform themselves into some feet for Needlenose. So have them like this, do the same for this side, rotate that around, and these big tabs are going to snap into the mech tech ports on the soles of Needlenose's feet, and do the same here for this side. And that is basically the Evo Fusion capability. I mean, I think the shoulder pads look cool, but the feet sadly do leave a lot to be desired, as there's no way for you to actually snap Scrap Hook's arms into anything. They do really and truly just kind of rest there. And in terms of the other weapons, I mean, you can take his Junkion shield, snap that there into the side, and take the hook, and again, create an almost animated lockdown vibe. So it's cool, but I really don't think we're going to be able to appreciate the full effect of this Evo Fusion gimmick until we get some of the other Junkions. And stay tuned for the review of Needlenose. And wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Scrap Hook. In all, I think this guy's great. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love updated representations of already established characters, but to get something new is definitely a massive breath of fresh air. I mean, this is a character which doesn't exist. Scrap Hook is original, and I love what they've done with the design. The bot mode looks awesome, definitely does have all of those classic Junkion design traits that you would expect, yet again, has an original twist. I think the articulation is cool, overall, accessories, they've knocked it out of the park. I wasn't expecting him to come with nowhere near as much as he does. I love the transformation, the fact that it requires no parts forming, yet this guy is basically a weaponizer, is definitely a step up, an evolution in regards to those weaponizers. And the vehicle mode, I mean, straight out of Mad Max, Dark of the Moon Megatron, upcoming Rise of the Beast Scourge / Battle Trap. This thing looks so cool. I love how it looks, really realistic, and like I've mentioned throughout this review, this guy really does have an almost live action movie feel to him, which I think is great. And I like how you can equip him with other Transformers. Like I said, I really don't think we're going to be able to appreciate the full effect until we get some more Junkions, but liking what they're doing so far. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think of Scraphook. Is it a character that you plan on adding to the collection? And like myself, do you think this is looking to be one of the highlights out of Legacy Evolution? I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.